As we write this, you don't have to look hard to find headlines in the media containing the words US and Iran and conflict. The BBC writes that the USA has just sent 1,000 troops over to the Middle East because, according to the American Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan, Iran has been acting hostile. Iran has been accused of oil tanker attacks, and the country is said to soon breach a 2015 deal regarding its uranium stockpiles. The New York Times has called this a new confrontation with the West. How bad could this get? What kind of a threat would Iran be? Is there really a threat at all when compared to the might of the US military? Let's now have a look. The US military. If you've watched many of our military comparison shows, then you are likely already an expert when it comes to the arsenal of the US military. You will know that the US spends more on defense than any other country by a long, long way. Sources differ, and it's hard to get the exact spending down to the last dollar, but in 2018 it's reported that the USA's defense budget was somewhere between $587 billion and $597 billion. But if you go to the actual US Department of Defense website, one of the first things you'll read is that President Trump planned to pump an extra $160 billion into defense. The prediction from the DoD, right from the horse's mouth, is that by the end of 2019, defense spending will have reached $686 billion. Where does all this cash go? Well, the DoD website just breaks it down simply into various departments: the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Joint Chiefs. If you are wondering what Joint Chiefs are, well, they kind of run the show. Part of their mission statement reads, "The future operating environment will place new demands on leaders at all levels. Our leaders must have the training, education, and experience to meet those demands." It's not all about spending money on killer toys, of course, because you have a lot of paychecks at the end of the week. The US military has 2,083 personnel. 281,900 work as active personnel, and 801,200 are reservists. On top of that, you have all kinds of special units and specialists to pay. It's not free when the US, say, wants to buy artificial intelligence technology to scan faces, go through hours of drone videos, etc. Research and development, according to the US military, eats up a great deal of money. Thankfully, someone else has broken down the budget for us, and it goes like this. A little over $205 billion goes to the Navy, and the Air Force will get basically the same at $204.8 billion. $191.4 billion will go to the Army, and $116.6 billion will go to projects spread across the DoD. $104.3 billion will go to research, development, test, and evaluation. $143.1 billion will go to buying new things, such as expensive aircraft and ships. $155.8 billion will actually go to the actual men and women of the military through the paycheck budget. $22.5 billion will go to building houses for personnel and other military construction projects. $292.7 billion, the biggest part of the budget, is for maintaining the military. If you add all this up, though, it comes to more than the actual budget. That's because some of the spending overlaps, such as research, purchases, or wages that might be accounted for as part of the individual forces' budgets. Military spending. If you look at what the military has been buying or trying to buy, you see that F-35 Joint Strike Fighters are a big item on the shopping list. These things also get sold, of course, but as we write this, Japan, according to some reports, is no longer looking at buying many more of them because it has created its own aircraft that it sees as superior. Nonetheless, if you follow military news, you'll know these things are still selling like hotcakes. The US currently has around 200 plans to build a staggering 1,763 more. As we have said before, the US no doubt has the most powerful air force in the world, and we just cannot list everything that is in its arsenal of flying machines. But some of the most powerful beasts include fleets of F-22 Raptors, F-15E Strike Eagles, FA-18E Super Hornets, and F-16 Fighting Falcons. Some of the newer machines are 15 KC-46 Tanker Strategic Military Transport Aircraft and also the B-21 stealth bomber. So, can Iran afford to spend billions and billions of dollars on just one plane alone? Well, the answer is a resounding no. And in fact, recent news reports tell us that the country has slashed defense spending to the equivalent of $43 billion. Compare this to the reports that in 2019, the US Navy just paid Virginia shipbuilder Huntington Ingalls $15 billion to start construction on the new Ford-class aircraft carriers. Also bear in mind the billions spent on new aircraft or the two fleet replenishment oilers at $1.1 billion. The 5,113 Joint Light Tactical Vehicles costing $2.0 billion, or the M1 Abrams tank modifications setting the US back $2.7 billion. Just one new Columbia-class submarine will cost $3.7 billion, and the military has requested $6 billion for some DDG-51 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. The list goes on, and we cannot possibly tell you everything on that shopping list. But all in all, you have over 2 million personnel, around 13,400 military planes and counting, including about 5,700 helicopters. Add to that 6,287 tanks for land-based operations. Then on water, you have a total of 20 aircraft carriers, which are like a travelling army, and would be very important when fighting a country located on the other side of the globe. The USA also has 68 destroyers and 68 submarines. But as you know, more of both are in the pipeline. As you can see, this is shaping up to be a David and Goliath story. No one doubts that in terms of equipment, the USA has by far the biggest and arguably most advanced military in the world. We say arguably because countries such as China, Japan, the UK, India, France, and Russia also have some very capable military toys. Iran, though, well, you won't find the country on any top 10 lists when it comes to military might, and some writers have described Iran's equipment as being Cold War-era machines. In total, Iran has 523,000 active military personnel, but also around 350,000 reservists. They own 509 military aircraft, which sounds fairly impressive, but let's see what kind of planes these are. For starters, they have 54 American-made McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIs. Some of these are pretty old, but we are told many have been upgraded. Joining the list are also some other capable multi-role aircraft, such as 23 French-made Dassault Mirage F-1s. As for ground attack, Iran has about 50 Russian-made planes in the Sukhoi Su range, the Su-22, 24, and 25. Iran is also in the process of building a fifth-generation stealth fighter aircraft called the IAIO Kaher 313, although some experts have cast doubts as to how viable this aircraft will be. This is not a weak air force by any means, but much of that strength comes from purchased American military hardware. That said, much of this fleet is aging and in need of an upgrade, whereas the American military has never stopped upgrading their equipment, whether they need it or not, as any American taxpayer can tell you. As for tanks, Iran has 1,634 of them, but we might ask just how advanced those tanks are. Well, again, the country owns quite a few older models bought from the USA, Russia, and also has some homemade tanks. But in 2018, Iran's Deputy Defense Minister Reza announced that the country was in the process of building another 700 to 800 new tanks. The country also has 2,345 armoured fighting vehicles, but compare that to the 39,223 armoured fighting vehicles in the USA, which for the most part are much more modern. But where Iran is really weak is in the water, as it doesn't have a single aircraft carrier to speak of. Remember, the US has 20. The country has no destroyers either, but does have a 34-strong submarine fleet and 6 frigates. While Iran really is an underdog to the US military, that doesn't mean it isn't a strong military. Ranking militaries is difficult and shouldn't be taken as an exact science. Iran has had to be a strong military presence before, and it has a large, well-trained military because of its location in a volatile region. Reporting has stated that they have a ground force that includes over 1,600 tanks, 725 reconnaissance and infantry fighting vehicles, 640 armoured personnel carriers, two 322 towed and self-propelled howitzers, and 1,176 multiple rocket launchers. Yes, the numbers can change, since we guess the press doesn't have a regular tank counter working all over the world, but we're guessing these numbers are pretty close to reality. Much like their air fleet, though, much of this equipment is somewhat outdated and likely needing either upgrading or full replacement. Now we already know that the USA has some of the most advanced special forces units in the world and also is not bad at collecting intelligence through the CIA, NIS, and both of their cutting-edge computer technologies. But the Iranian forces also have a special branch that is said to be very highly trained and is an entity to be feared. The Quds Force, a special ops unit within Iran's Revolutionary Guards, numbers around 15 to 30,000 very skilled agents and works in what you might call unconventional warfare. Iran also has the advantage in the event of an invasion of being a geographically difficult country to assault via land. It's a large country, and the major cities are mostly located in areas that would be difficult for land forces to quickly reach. And now we come back to the start. What about these new fears of nuclear conflict? The New York Times writes this: Iran is still well more than a year away from being able to build a weapon, perhaps much longer. But the experts in that article also said it would take much longer to produce what the Times called a deliverable weapon. It's highly unlikely Iran is thinking about attacking the USA, and many European countries have blamed the US for putting Iran in a difficult position thanks to harsh sanctions. We won't get into the politics, but suffice to say, confrontation of military powers with nuclear weapons is not something anyone wants. As Newsweek points out, while the US military is by far superior in every way, an invasion would be a long, drawn-out affair. They wrote, "If decades of difficult conflicts worldwide have taught the American military anything, it is that a mighty armory goes only so far." Let's hope for some diplomacy that works for both nations and the threat of conflict behind us. So, who would come out on top in a clash between the USA and Iran? Is it a no-brainer, or is there more to the story than meets the eye? We've just peeled back the layers of one of the most heated military matchups of our time, and the stakes couldn't be higher. But here's where it gets even more intense. What if the unthinkable happens? Would the sheer might of the US military be enough to crush its adversary? Or is there a hidden edge Iran could exploit? Before you jump to conclusions, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our deep dives into the world's most explosive conflicts. Drop your predictions in the comments. Do you think the US's unmatched arsenal and technological supremacy will secure victory, or could Iran's strategic advantages surprise us all? Get ready for more jaw-dropping analyses, because the battle for supremacy is just heating up. Stay tuned and keep your eyes locked on our channel for the next intense showdown. Until then, stay curious and stay vigilant. See you in the next video.